The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. From the studios of Asheville FM, 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of the show, you're free to do so. Just send us an email if you end up using any content so we can be in touch. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. The show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop.
This week I spoke with Şoreş Ronahi. Şoreş is a leader in the Youth Union of Rojava, an autonomous movement advocating and raising voices of young people in the social revolution taking place in Rojava, the autonomous region in northern Syria. Last week, Turkey, ruled by the AKP party of Tayyip Erdogan, began an offensive against one of Syria's three cantons, Efrin, including aerial and ground assaults on YPJ and YPG militia and civilians fleeing the violence. The Turkish government, which has allowed ISIS, referred to in this conversation by their Arabic acronym DAESH, as well as al-Nusra Front and other Islamists, now flying the Free Syrian Army flag to train and operate from Turkish territory in order to attack and undermine this social experiment of pluralistic feminist and secular self-management going on in Rojava. To hear past interviews we've conducted on the topic of Rojava, check out the links in our blog post. As a side note, although Rojava is not an explicitly anarchist project, it is an anti-nationalist, anti-state movement that holds as its pillars ecology, anti-capitalism, and feminism, and is in part inspired by American former anarchist-turned-communalist Murray Bookchin. Beyond Murray Bookchin's impact, I personally feel that Rojava adds an IRL experiment in combat and revolutionary organizing that many anarchists have engaged in the forms of the International Revolutionary People's Guerrilla Forces, the Queer Insurrection and Liberation Army, within elements of the International Freedom Battalions, as well as within the PYD-administered YPG and YPJ militias on the front lines fighting Daesh. Thus, it should be of interest to many anarchists and people seeking liberation and feminism. And now some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what?
Daniel Simpson is already home. He went home Tuesday, but an experience he had a couple weeks ago here is pretty illustrative of how hateful, petty, and racist these prison fascists really are. Before he went home on Tuesday, Daniel was one of those prisoners who gets involved in every program he can. He was involved in education, and I knew him from Toastmasters, which is an international organization that provides a forum for improving public speaking skills. Daniel might be one of the funniest dudes I have ever met. One of the best speeches he gave at Toastmasters, however, was a serious one, recounting how former slave and later slave abolitionist Frederick Douglass was forbidden from reading as a child, and all that Frederick Douglass had to do in order to secretly learn to read. Daniel made the point, as a black man himself, how frustrated he felt that the descendants of slavery take for granted the opportunity to read, how knowledge is power, and how disempowered folks not struggling to obtain information are dooming themselves. Kind of ironic, but a couple weeks ago, not long after Daniel delivered that speech about Frederick Douglass, Daniel headed to breakfast chow before going to class. He had a net bag over his shoulder full of books, one of them being the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. Daniel was immediately approached by white staff who asked him what he was doing. He explained that he was coming to eat before he went to class. They asked him what he had in the net bag, and he told them, books. The staffer then laughed and asked Daniel why he had books when he can't read. The white staffer, in the long history of oppressive and racist disempowerment, felt it was appropriate to assume that anyone black is illiterate, and should be. Not that I need to point out that if the staffer had eaten less lead paint and was himself better at reading, he might not have to spend 30 years doing this miserable job of locking other humans in cages or taking out his unhappy childhood on a population slightly more disempowered than himself. He wouldn't have to spend his adulthood stalking around like a bully with a can of pepper spray, dressed in a gray uniform so reminiscent of Confederate soldiers, whose legacy this baboon is all too happy to continue. At any rate, Lieutenant Holt also approached, and as she approached, Daniel was told not to say another word or he'd get pepper sprayed in the face. So as the lieutenant asked questions, Daniel was in a catch-22. If he didn't answer her questions, he was in trouble. If he did, he would be assaulted. Quick side note here, but Warren Correctional was the second most violent Ohio prison in large part because white staff quite frequently pepper spray black prisoners for the slightest and most ridiculous reasons, and then play blame the victim, tailoring their stories to make their assault victim appear at fault. Looking at the stats, you'd almost think that black prisoners transferred to Warren with no history of staff assault suddenly get violent, like there's something in the water. If you don't believe the something in the water theory, then you almost have to look critically at the staff. So, threatened with assault by a staffer with a can of cancer chemicals, Daniel didn't speak, but really, he shouldn't have to. He had an education ID, and he was, after all, carrying a bag of books, not a bag of bombs. I would suggest to you that if someone white, like me, came to chow with a bag of books, like I frequently have, no one would have looked at the white prisoner twice. But Daniel, a model prisoner, did not have the luxury of white privilege. Being black and carrying books still provokes suspicion, just as it did in Frederick Douglass's day. And just like the regime of those former plantations, the brutal forces of racist oppression still seek to disempower. Books in black hands constitute contraband. Possessing them results in getting escorted to segregation. On top of all of that, according to the conduct report, which might, through the magic of the interweb, get scanned and posted at SeanSwain.org, Daniel getting accosted and standing silently with books and enduring abuse constituted several rule violations, including creating a disturbance and disrespect to an officer. So, according to white staff, a black prisoner getting harassed for carrying books is responsible for the disturbance, not the pigs who harassed him and offended the sensibilities of everyone who saw the event. This is the real mentality of Ohio's prison complex. I saw Daniel go home on Tuesday. He was walking to the gate early in the morning, escorted by a white staffer who was openly sneering as Daniel strode toward the gate, taking with him nothing other than that bag full of books. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from Warren Correctional in Lebanon, Ohio. If you're reading and not getting caught, you are resisting.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain 243-205 Warren CI P.O. Box 120 5787 State Route 63 Lebanon, Ohio 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at SeanSwain.org.
We're speaking with Şoreş Ronahi. Mr. Ronahi is in the leadership of the Youth Union of Rojava. Thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you as well for taking your time to listen to us. I'm very happy, and I feel honored to be able to speak to you.
It's mutual. Would you be so kind as to tell listeners about yourself and what the Youth Union of Rojava is?
Yes, I can do that. I'm Şoreş Ronahi, as you said. I'm a member of the coordination of the Youth Union of Rojava. As the Youth Union of Rojava, we are a part of the youth movement inside of the revolution that is going on in Rojava. So we see ourselves a part of the movement here in Rojava, or if like locally it might be more understandable for you, Northern Syria. where, of course, inside of Syria for over the last 7 years, there has been a civil war ongoing, and that civil war is going on until today as well. And we were able, with our people together, to manage to self-administrate ourselves during this crisis that happened in our country, as well as the Kurdish people, but the other nationalities, other ethnics that are living in this part of Syria, in this part of Kurdistan as well, together to, on the one side, build up our own social system, our own administrative system, based on our, on our idea of an democratic and ecological society and freedom of women. And on the other side, we were able to defend ourselves the best way possible. And of course, that's maybe even one of the reasons that we are talking together today, because of the situation right now here, especially the threat of Turkey and the direct attack and occupation attempt of Turkish army and their affiliates, the so-called Free Syrian Army, especially in Afrin right now. So as the youth movement, we see ourselves a part of this revolution, and we seek to build up a free and democratic society with freedom of women and an ecological way of living. So to just explain it really shortly, of course there is things we could talk about hours about right now, but just shortly.
No, that's wonderful. Can you, so the youth movement considers itself a part of Tev-Dem, is that right?
Yeah, we are as well autonomously organized. So we have our own structures, we have our own councils and communes and committees in every city, and as much as possible every village that exists in Rojava. Just to make it more clear, Rojava, for those who don't know, Rojava we say is the Kurdish name, which means Western Kurdistan. Like, it's the name for Western Kurdistan. Rojava means West. So Western Kurdistan, Kurdistan as our home country that has been divided into 4 parts for the last 100 years in the aftermath of the First World War. And of course, one of our main aims in our struggle is to be able to unify Kurdistan again, but not only to unify Kurdistan, but to build up a democratic Middle East at the same time.
And you mentioned other ethnicities coexisting in the same area as yourself, and you've talked about the Kurds, from whence a lot of these ideas and these organizing structures have come. Can you talk about the sort of democratic vision, a democratic, like pluralistic vision of Rojava as a social revolution, and also how that is working in the communities where the PYD has administration?
Yes, yes. Our philosophical and ideological leader, Riber Apo, you might know him by the name Abdullah Öcalan. He created he created an alternative system, especially for the Middle East, which is our project that we want to present to the whole people of the Middle East as a possible solution to all those crises and chaotic situations, the problems that we are facing in the Middle East today, and that is the democratic nation. So we think that the nation state itself, as one of the basic columns of capitalist modernity, is one of the main reasons that our region, our land, got into a situation like it is right now and like it is today. Of course, there are some other things as well. You could as well talk about the problems of confession and radical the way that confession is and beliefs are used in the Middle East, or especially patriarchy, which is one of the biggest problems, not only in the Middle East but all over the world. But the Democratic Nation is our alternative project to the nation state of capitalist modernity, with the basic goal to overcome borders and to be able to create a life of all those different nationalities that are always used for, I don't know, for the people in power, for wars and all of that, by using nationalism and racism and all of that. And so the democratic nation for us is the alternative to that, to be able to get everybody together, which is in our region right now a huge diversity. We have Kurds, we have Arabs, we have Syriacs, we have Armenians, we have Turkmens, and many others as well.
To go a little further into this, can you talk about how the direct democratic and dispersed method that's being proposed would allow for representation, or allow for representation along lines of gender and ethnicity and religion through the council system?
Yes, like right now, of course, as I said, like over the last 7 years, this revolution is going on, and we were always faced until today. We were faced always with a huge physical threat, like the threat of being occupied, the threat of getting militarily crushed, which is one of the reasons why we always put one of our biggest focus on self-defense and to build up our own self-defense structures. But on the other side, as I mentioned in the beginning as well, we were able up to some level to build up a democratic administrative system, which over the last month got to the point where we started to build up the so-called Northern Syria Federation. There were elections taking place for that as well. First, the elections in villages and streets and quarters and so on for the communes, and then the second election for city councils, regional councils, and the canton councils. And actually, there was the plan for the Northern Syria Federation elections as well to take place in these months. But this is right now due to the situation of us being at war with the Turkish states and the gangs that are supporting them. But inside of this Northern Syria Federation system and its councils, we have how you say in English, like quotes. Do you say quotes, or like for example, it needs to be 50% women and 50% men. There need to be, like, according to the region, if there are different nationalities, from every nationality there needs to be representatives. There is even for the youth, for us in this system, of course, this is due to a year-long struggle of the youth movement as well to get respected as an important force inside of this revolution. But in those councils, we have as well a number for youth to be a part of it.
It's noticeable at this point that Şoresh's audio changes sound quality. A part of this is because this was an afterthought. We wanted to make sure that we got all of the on-the-ground stuff about the military assaults out of the way in case the electricity went out again, as it did one time during this conversation. So this portion about economics was recorded later. It's worth acknowledging that developments such as with pluralism, representation, and gender parity in Rojava have come during the midst of a civil war in Syria. That said, I wondered since you mentioned the project in Rojava was one against capitalism, if you would talk about the sorts of economic developments and changes you've seen in Efrin or elsewhere that can show listeners what alternatives Rojava is developing, either in terms of models or in practice.
So, talking about Rojava as an anti-capitalist project at the same time, for us it's important to emphasize that we want to build up a society and a life that doesn't work by capitalist logic, doesn't work by capitalist lifestyle, doesn't work by capitalist economy as well. First, for us, capitalism does not only mean economy. Like for us, economy is a part that is used by capitalism, but even more than that, capitalism itself is an ideology and a way of life, a way how the society has been structured in like many ways. So to destroy capitalism and build up a new way of living together for us has many sides, and this struggle has to be made on many different levels. So it's a struggle in everyday life, even to fight against your own personality, to struggle with your own personality that was born inside of capitalist society, and for that reason your own mentality that is being set up by capitalist mentality. So to struggle against that on a daily basis. In what way? In the way of course educating yourself in alternative ways of living, and the ideology and the philosophy that roots to that. And for us, that's, as I mentioned before as well, is the ideology of Abdullah Öcalan and his philosophy. And for that reason, to build up a communal lifestyle, a communal life together, where everything is shared with each other, where everything is done together on a material basis and on a metaphysical fundament as well. So it's not only material and not only metaphysical. Both of them are in a dialectical relation with each other, towards each other. So of course it's a really deep question, and we should have the time to talk about it way more deeper, and should be able to discuss about that. But to give a short look into it, for example, right now Afrin, why is Afrin the way that it is? Why was it able to defend itself for 7 years of war inside of Syria? Under the situation of embargo, under current attacks of different gangs, like parts of the FSA, ISIS, or even the Turkish state, which has always tried to attack Afrin and other parts of Rojava, of course, as well, during this time. So Afrin was able to defend itself and to manage a good, stable administration and a more or less good working economy by building up a communal life, by sticking together, by building up a cooperative way of economy. So our concept of economy, which is not like nothing so much new that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So there are many examples for it in the world, for cooperatives, a cooperative way of producing urban, let's say, on the one side, urban agriculture, on the other side, cooperatives that work like factories for different products that are necessary in society. On the other hand, Afrin especially is a region that is really, how you say, fruitful, like a really fruitful region that due to a history of hundreds of years where the people of Afrin themselves have worked a lot. Is a region where it's full of trees, full of different vegetables, fruits, especially known for olives. So there are more than 20 million olive trees in Afrin itself. Like, you have to imagine, I myself spent some time in Afrin. You have to imagine, like, everywhere it's olive trees, everywhere, like wherever you can imagine, and it's all done by handwork by the people themselves. So when it comes to the time to get everything together, every people of a village go together, help each other, and get the olives or the vegetables or the fruits and whatever. They get them together and sell them together. They are able in that way to profit together from their own work, and that's basically it. Like, it's nothing that that's nothing where you need to discuss for, like, it's nothing that is so hard to understand or so. The point of it is to stick together as a society, as a community, to have a communal life, to question your own capitalist mentality, and for that to build up a new democratic social mentality that is able to not only think for your own person in an individual way, but is able to in the end commit to the society and to the community. And I guess that's the important point of it. So I don't know, to give a short outlook on that topic, I can say that. If there's anything else, of course, I will be happy for other questions. Maybe we will have the possibility, the time to talk about other topics in future again. You have my number. And yeah, I'm happy that you took your time to listen to us, and hopefully we will hear from each other.
Thank you for allowing me to ask those questions. I'd love to ask more once we've gotten through a description of what's actually going on right now that you're experiencing, if you still have electricity and the energy to have a little longer of a conversation. So currently, Turkey is conducting an offensive, a series of attacks against Rojava in the canton of Efrin. Can you talk about this in terms of what has the Turkish state attacked, and is Turkey only targeting military installations, and why did this start?
Okay, so first I have to say our struggle against Turkish imperialism, against Turkish occupation as Kurdish people is nothing that just happened right now. It's in like historical struggle, a struggle for maybe even more than 100 years, taking on in this region, and we know really well what the Turkish state is like. So it's nothing that we are right now really surprised of, that the Turkish state attacked us or so. Like, even if we just look over the last years, the war that took place here in Syria, and especially in Rojava and Northern Syria, the war especially against ISIS was always for us a fight and a struggle against the Turkish state at the same time, because the Turkish state used ISIS, or tried to use ISIS to crash our people here and to crash our revolution here. There are many proofs for that. So it's nothing like, everybody who wants to make research on that can make research and will find many sources for that, what I'm saying right now. Like, starting from Kobani until the end, until today, it was always the Turkish state that tried to crash us militarily with those gangs, tried and did everything in its hands diplomatically to stop us for being acknowledged as not only a military force but as a people and as a political project that can play a major role in solving the crisis in Syria. So for that reason, of course, we knew that by DAESH, ISIS coming to an end, that most likely a war with the state will happen, because they are not going to just accept us crashing ISIS and the ISIS ending, and then they are just going to say, okay, they won and we are just going to sit here. No, we know that nothing like that is going to happen. In some way they were going to attack us, and right now that is happening in Afrin. Afrin itself, we have to understand why Afrin. Afrin, of course, right now is in a really difficult political situation, as the only part of Rojava that is cut off from the rest of Rojava, that is surrounded by either the Syrian regime from the south or the Turkish state and their affiliates from the north, the west, and the east. So of course Afrin, for that reason, is in a difficult situation. On the other hand, Turkey more likely is able to attack there. If you look on international on the international situation, as in Afrin itself, the so-called coalition, the international coalition forces are not in Afrin. But we know that an attack on Afrin was not able to take place, first without the knowledge of Russia, and second without the knowledge of the US and other countries that are part of the coalition. So we know how those international policies and things go on. But Afrin itself, why is it a special target for the Turkish state? Afrin is a symbol actually for a decade-long struggle of the Kurdish people against occupation. So if we look in a larger frame, for decades there have been thousands of people from Afrin that joined even the guerrilla and fought against the Turkish state for years long, and until today Afrin is one of the you could say most patriotic places of Kurdish society in Kurdistan overall, in all four parts of Kurdistan. And for that reason, of course, Afrin is a really important target for the Turkish state. So they started to attack 13 days ago. We were prepared for that. Everybody here was prepared for that. The people in Afrin and all the people in Rojava and Northern Syria were prepared for that. It is nothing that just came out of nowhere. For over the last month, the Turkish state, the AKP government, Erdogan himself, their media, they made a lot of propaganda to start this operation on Afrin. So we were preparing ourselves as well, but they started the attack, and right now there's really heavy clashes going on in Afrin on different front lines. The Turkish state and their affiliates, they are attacking as well from the air and from the ground. They are using whatever they have on war technology in their hands. They are using there from German tanks, the German Leopard tanks. They are using helicopters, many warplanes, the F-16 warplanes that are used. There are 24 hours a day drones over Afrin circling to surveil what is happening in Afrin and to have the air surveillance. So they are attacking with everything that they have. You asked if they are just attacking military places. Of course they are attacking military places, but if you follow the news and it's really easy to see that one of their main targets are civilians themselves, civilians, the people of Afrin themselves. So, like from the beginning of the war, like from the first evening when the war started, they began to bomb several, like hundreds of places in the Afrin region, and from that day on, they bombed the city itself several times. They totally destroyed Jinderes town, which, like if you see the pictures of Jinderes town now, you will say it looks exactly like Kobani in 2014 or other places that have been destroyed in this region throughout the years. They bombed several schools. They bombed the hospital in Jinderes town. There are many civilian casualties in this war. Many civilian that have been killed by Turkish airstrikes and shelling of civilian areas. Like up to now, our information is more than 100 civilians that have been killed. Among them, dozens of children as well. Like only today, just today, if you like around 2-3 hours before we started to talk, there was a common incident in the Rajo district in Afrin, where the so-called FSA members, the affiliates of the Turkish state, got into a village, and four inhabitants of that village that refused to follow the orders of the invaders. They were captured, dragged into a house, and were burnt alive inside of that house by those gangs members. Just to give an example of what is happening right now in Afrin. So we are facing right now a total attack on our people, on our revolution, and there is no border between military targets or civilian targets from the Turkish side, so they don't make any difference in that.
So just to sort of tie a few things together, is it that Turkey, which is currently ruled by the AKP party, I think the Party of Order, is that what it stands for, basically, or translates to?
Yeah, it's just, what is it, AKP, Justice and Equality, or something like that?
So the AKP is ruled over by the strongman Tayyip Erdogan. It's an Islamist regime, right? Like bringing in religious law in a lot of ways. And is this like between a shared desire to destabilize a multi-ethnic, multi-religious region, as well as destabilize Kurdish attempts at organizing, and with the interests of imposing sort of a religious fascism? Is that what ties together elements of FSA and DAESH and the AKP government of Turkey? Or what draws them together?
Yeah, definitely. Like what you're saying is right. Like Erdogan sees himself as some kind of emperor that needs to go back to the, like as they say, like the good old days from the Ottoman Empire. So actually, like their goal is to once more be strongest empire in the Middle East, in the region, and for that reason, especially the Kurdish freedom struggle always was their, how you say, like their biggest target. Why? Because the Kurdish question itself holds the downfall or the solution of all the problems in these regions in itself. Why? Because Kurdistan has been divided into 4 parts. So we have a part of Kurdistan inside of Turkey. We have a part of Kurdistan in Iran. We have a part of Kurdistan in Iraq. We have a part of Kurdistan in Syria. All of those states hold many different nationalities, different confessions and religions. They are strategical regions if you think geographically and geopolitically. They are really strategic regions in the Middle East, and not only in the Middle East, but if you think on a global perspective as well. Economically, they hold a lot of rich. They are really rich countries. Actually, their earth is really rich. There's a lot of in this region, Mesopotamia, where you have the Euphrates and the how you call it in English, Tigris.
Tigris.
Tigris. You have the Euphrates and the Tigris. You have a lot of sweet water. You have oil. There is many different things, many different reasons for this conflict to be not just a conflict in this time, or not just a conflict between the YPG and the Turkish state, and not just a conflict between right now our us here and the AKP or something like that. No, it's a historical struggle, and it's a historical conflict that needs to be solved. And if the Kurdish question would be solved, then the policy of the Turkish state, but not only of the Turkish state, but of all the nation states from 100 years, the columns that they have been built up on, they would all shatter down. They would all crash. Why? Because they have been built up on this fact to not recognize the existence of the Kurdish people, to not recognize the different nationalities in this region, but only to focus on their idea of one state, one religion, one flag, one nation, one I don't know whatever. And all of that is going to crash down if this question is going to be solved, and that's what they fear, and that's why they attack in this way. And especially because the Kurdish movement, the Kurdish freedom movement, and not only today, not only anymore the Kurdish freedom movement, like today in Northern Syria, this freedom movement became a freedom movement of all the peoples in this region itself. So there are thousands of Arabs that gave their life, for example, during the last years to defend this revolution. There are hundreds of Syriacs and Armenians that gave their lives to defend this revolution. So it's not only anymore a Kurdish freedom movement, but a freedom movement of the peoples itself. But why is it such a target for them? Because this movement is not like any other movement. It is strong. The people are behind it. It has a long history. It has a lot of experience. We know what we are facing, and we have a clear project and a clear alternative. We are not just talking about some utopia that we might want to achieve, that we might not just see in our dreams. No, it's something that we try to put into practice in our everyday life right now, where we are sitting here. And that's what they fear. And of course, this all has an international level as well, as all this started with the so-called Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916 during the First World War, which was made by France and Great Britain. And today, of course, many other players that are in this that are taking place in this crisis as well. So for us, this is a war and a struggle, not only for this time, not only for this region, but actually a struggle between either democratic modernity and socialism, or capitalist modernity. if we put it on a larger scale. So I don't know. Yeah.
So Şoreş, I have about 10 more minutes to be in studio. I'm really enjoying this, but for listeners that are in the West, that are in living under governments that have an engagement or have a part that they're playing in this conflict in the region, and also specifically have relationships with Turkey or providing armaments that are being used. For instance, the U.S. is supposedly an ally of the PYD administration in the north of Syria, and has given YPG and YPJ forces weapons and fought alongside of them against DAESH. The U.S. is also a NATO ally of Turkey. Where does the U.S. appear to stand in this conflict that's going on in Efrin?
So first, we need to understand how this alliance happened. The first thing is that until today, the U.S. has never supported the administration of the people here until today. Until today, it's a military alliance inside of the coalition against ISIS, and even with us and our representatives trying to work on it to get politically recognized, to have this Northern Syria Federation politically recognized internationally. Until today, the U.S. never did anything like that. Until today, it's just a military and tactical alliance that is taking place. And of course, maybe it sometimes might seem awkward to some people, like a socialist movement allying with the U.S. In this world, which is maybe the first time seen in history that this is happening. But of course, this is because there are some common interests in this region for some time. That does not mean that this is going to stay for always like that. But right now there are common interests. But of course, we are saying at the same time that our war against ISIS was not just a war against ISIS to defend our people, but in the end, by us being on the front line, by our people being on the front lines, by the men and women of this country being on the front lines and giving their lives against ISIS, we did not only serve our own people, but in the end we served for the international community and to the people worldwide. And of course, we think that it is about time to have this being acknowledged internationally by having the Northern Syria Federation acknowledged officially. Of course, the main actor who does not want that and who is working against it with all that they have is Turkey. Turkey itself is a NATO member at the same time, and one of the main historical allies of the US and other European states in the Middle East. And for that reason, we see that the US until today was not willing to just put Turkey aside or so, but trying to as well do it on the one side and on the other side. And right now, the result of that is that they are silent about what is happening in Afrin, and we are facing a serious attack. We are facing an attack that is breaking so many international laws that I cannot count now right now. But still, the international community and the US on top of it remain silently have obviously accepted this occupation and invasion of Turkey in Afrin. And of course, for us, we are willing to resist by ourselves. We are the only thing that we always believed in is our own strength and our own organization, our own people. So we don't rely on other forces to help us in this situation. But of course, we think that this is not just a matter of our people here, but an international matter. And for that, of course, internationally, the people internationally and the states internationally need to take a stand against what is happening right now in Afrin.
So for solidaristic people, for anti-capitalists, for anarchists and socialists and what have you, for feminists abroad, especially those living in the countries that are refusing to take a stand or are taking a negative stand by sending tanks, for instance, in Germany's case, what do you request of comrades out here who are living abroad? How can we show solidarity?
Like basically, as I said, the Rojava revolution is, in our eyes, not only a hope for the Kurdish people. It is not only a hope for the people in the Middle East. It might be a hope for the people worldwide if we understand and if we try to take each other's hands to struggle against capitalist modernity, to struggle against oppression, against patriarchy and nationalism, against racism, to struggle against fascism in the end. And that's what we are facing right now. We are facing a fascist attack. We are facing the attempt of a fascist state to occupy our land and to destroy what we have built up step by step here over years. And for that reason, we think that Rojava, because it is important not only for us here, but for the people worldwide, especially for revolutionaries, socialists, anarchists, whoever in this world who wants to fight for a free life, this revolution is important, and that's why we need to stand together in these times, especially in these times. Like, we need to stand together in the hard times, fight together against fascism, like whatever possibilities you have, wherever you are, if in the US or anywhere else in the world, whatever possibilities you have. This is not just the time to sit at home in front of the computer and follow the news and maybe express some solidarity. No, it's the time to take action together to fight against this Turkish state invasion, which is a NATO member at the same time, to remember everybody once more. So we need to take a stand against fascism worldwide.
And in solidarity with the people that are resisting inside of Turkey, too. It's the Erdogan regime has been horribly destructive to not only Kurdish people around the country and in Bakur in particular, but also against dissident members that are standing in solidarity with the movement in Rojava, whether it be members of the HDP party or members of DAF, the Anarchist Federation. Right? This is a widespread repression of intellectuals and lawyers, of civil society.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I agree to that. So, of course, there are in Turkey, when we talk about Turkey, we don't talk about all the people in Turkey. There are many people struggling. There are actually millions of people struggling in Turkey, and that are faced with a huge state terrorism on their life. There are 10,000s of people that just wanted to express their opinion. They are imprisoned and in Turkish prisons right now. So yes, of course, this is, as I said, it's not a struggle just in Afrin. Afrin is right now a symbol for the resistance against fascism in this region and maybe even worldwide.
Well, Şoreş, my heart goes out to you. I wish you the best, and yeah, I wish you solidarity.
Thank you very much. I would like, before we end, I would like to, how you say in English, to commemorate all our falling, our comrades that have fallen in this revolution, especially our friends that fell in the resistance of Afrin right now. And I especially want to say that our struggle is to continue the struggle of our fallen comrades, of our fallen friends, and so everybody who is with us shall believe and trust us that we will never get away from the path of our fallen friends. Especially today, there was a friend that fell in Kobani, and over the last days, there's one friend, Avesta Khabur, Sheikh Avesta Khabur. She gave her life. She sacrificed herself actually when Turkish state tried to invade Afrin from the border with heavy weapons, with tanks, with aircraft and all of that, and she sacrificed herself to stop a Turkish tank to get into Afrin. And in her name, I want to commemorate all the fallen friends, and I thank you very much that you gave me the time to express myself, and I wish everybody the best. And as we say here in Kurdistan, Serkeftin.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself as well. Thank you very much.
We're going to close out here with a track entitled YPJ by the French hip-hop artist Euphonic, Euphonik. This is off the album Inconnu Mais Reconnu 2, and the track is YPJ, in reference to the Women's Protection Unit militias in Rojava.
Sous une myriade d'étoiles, combien d'entre elles sont tombées? Juste une poignée de femmes pour symbole de liberté. Des Amazones légendaires face à des fils de chiens. Pour tous les peuples syriens, l'espoir d'une nouvelle ère. Des camarades brûlés vifs, des corps décapités. Mais plus aucune pitié et laisse place à l'offensive. C'est le retour de flamme, ils ont allumé la mèche. L'enfer c'est les femmes, pour tous les chiens de Daesh. Rien n'arrêtera la lutte, que le ciel trempe face à elle. Les combats restent les mêmes, de Syrie au Sahel. Toujours prêtes à partir, il faut les voir femmes et fières. Elles mourront martyrs pour un peu de lumière. Face à la barbarie, combien d'enfants condamnés. Dans une brève accalmie, la paix souffle sur Kobané. Un drapeau jaune et vert, poireau YPJ. Hommage aux guerriers et guerrières, à ceux qui sont partis. C'est le courage en trois lettres, c'est l'espoir et la lutte. C'est des femmes qui animent l'arrête, c'est la rage qui percute. C'est des sœurs qui meurent, des victoires et des frissons. C'est du sang et de la sueur, c'est des rêves à l'horizon. C'est le courage en trois lettres, c'est l'espoir et la lutte. C'est des femmes qui animent l'arrête, c'est la rage qui percute. C'est des sœurs qui meurent, des victoires et des frissons. C'est du sang et de la sueur, c'est des rêves à l'horizon. Des milliers d'innocents, ici les tombes fleurissent. Que les djihadistes périssent et qu'ils pourrissent dans leur sang. Ils tuent au nom de Dieu, c'est l'islam qu'ils salissent. Si vraiment il existe, il ne reconnaît plus ses fils. N'y voit rien d'absurde, j'y mets cœur et larmes. C'est pour toutes les sœurs d'armes et la guérilla kurde. À celles qui viennent d'ailleurs, envers et contre tout. J'irai prier pour vous, que l'avenir soit meilleur. La beauté de ces femmes, assument des armées, ouais. Des princesses armées, un peu comme tout Eldan. Elles ont ce regard diaphane, à nul autre pareil. Aucune de ces fleurs ne fanent, car elles portent le soleil. Se battre pour les autres avant de se battre pour soi. C'est la révolution qui arrive à grands pas. C'est le retour de flamme, ils ont allumé la mèche. L'enfer c'est les femmes pour tous les chiens de Daesh. C'est le courage en trois lettres, c'est l'espoir et la lutte. C'est des femmes qui animent l'arrête, c'est la rage qui percute. C'est des sœurs qui meurent, des victoires et des frissons. C'est du sang et de la sueur, c'est des rêves à l'horizon. C'est le courage en trois lettres, c'est l'espoir et la lutte. C'est des femmes qui animent l'arrête, c'est la rage qui percute. C'est des sœurs qui meurent, des victoires et des frissons. C'est du sang et de la sueur, c'est des rêves à l'horizon.
ما بيجيني جن ما بكج متنادي حنامي جا خنادنا برمن سنا خدنا برمن خورتا.
From the studios of Asheville FM, 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, And you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of the show, you're free to do so. Just send us an email if you end up using any content so we can be in touch. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. The show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop.